This video I have been trying to make for a really long time. I recorded it originally, I think, in November, edited almost all of it, lost a bunch of space, recorded it 2 more times, never was able to start editing it because I didn't have space, and so now we're here. I've bought an external hard drive for my laptop, so now I have enough space. Today we're going over the evolution and a little bit of the history of YouTube up until now of February of 2021. YouTube as a platform is a video sharing website. Was not originally going to be that, but the idea for YouTube originally came about in 2004 when three major things were kind of happening in pop culture and the world a little bit at this time. The first, in the beginning of 2004, we had the Super Bowl incident where Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake were performing, and Janet Jackson's wardrobe malfunction exposed her boob on live TV. And that became like a really big, one of the first big like viral moments of people looking for the clip to rewatch it over and over again, which is just weird and gross. The second thing, which is much more lighthearted, is online dating. Was really starting to take off at this time. And then the third major event was actually the 2004 tsunami, devastating and widespread, and people were trying to find videos and quick kind of news articles relating to this tsunami and the kind of aftermath and the effect that it was having on the people. And these three things were the start, the genesis of YouTube. We'll go into kind of that a little bit more in depth, but you know, YouTube has changed over the last 16 to 17 years that it has been in existence, and that it has been a platform for people to go ahead and share videos on. And today I'm going to be giving my perspective of me as a YouTube user, as well as looking at some of the changes that YouTube has had to its platform, to the kind of content that was really succeeding on YouTube. And then finally a little bit of the behind the scenes, what was happening at YouTube's kind of corporate offices. And before we do get into all of that, I want to quickly just ask that you please like, share, comment, subscribe. This video has been a really long work in progress, so I would really like a lot of people to see it and give me feedback on what you think of these kind of more long-form, deep dive kinds of content videos, because I definitely would be open to making more in the future. I just have to know if people like this kind of thing. So we have part 1, humble beginnings, which I'm defining the years from 2005 to 2007. So YouTube is an online video sharing platform. We all know that. It was created in February of 2005, February 14th, actually, and it was created by 3 former PayPal employees, and their names are Chad Hurley, Steve Chen, and Jawad Karim. Originally, the idea was thought after the really big cultural impacts that I talked about before, Janet Jackson's Super Bowl performance and the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. Jawad Karim, who was one of the founders, he said that the basis of the idea was that video clips of these events could not easily be found online. And he, as a response to this, wanted to create a place where video sharing could be done easier for people who had these kinds of video clips, to just go ahead and put them all in one place for anyone to kind of come and consume these quick video bits, video bites. Meanwhile, Chad Hurley and Steve Chen had the idea to create an online dating platform, and as I mentioned, in 2004, 2005, online dating was very much becoming a more serious thing. It was kind of having a boom, I guess you could say. You know, the internet being around for a while at this point, since about the 90s, being widely available to most people in America, at least. Online dating was always going to become a thing from that, of course. You know, you had those early chat rooms of AOL, and people loved to try to connect with these total strangers. Nowadays, you know, we're a lot more safe, and we know a lot more that people are not who they say they are on the internet all of the time. But back then, it was exciting, it was new. And so these two guys thought, hey, let's try to create an online dating platform. But the idea behind it is that it was actually more going to be picture video based and less profile based, which I find really interesting. Like you have Tinder where you get like, what is it, 6 or 7 pictures that you can put on your profile. But it's, and you get like a little bio. So Tinder is primarily photo based, but Tinder didn't come around for like another almost 10 years later. This idea was kind of ahead of its time, and I find it really fascinating and really interesting, but, ultimately it didn't work out. So when the online dating platform of YouTube idea kind of was scrapped and given up on, that's when Chad Hurley and Steve Chen kind of connected with Jawad Karim, and the original idea of YouTube that Jawad had kind of came into existence, of it being a video sharing platform for people who had these little clips and things like that to go ahead and upload for other people to watch and other people to go ahead and share. On February 14th, 2005, it was actually Chad Hurley. He registered as the CEO, the trademark, logo, and domain for YouTube. And with a few, investments from different places and different companies and whatnot, they set up a headquarters in San Mateo, California. Was when YouTube was officially born, on Valentine's Day, 2005. That is YouTube's official birthday. And so a few months later, on April 23rd, 2005, the first YouTube video was actually uploaded, and it was entitled Me at the Zoo, and it was actually Jawad Karim. He was walking around the San Diego Zoo, and it was his friend from, I think, high school, was recording him. The video is only 18 seconds long. The video itself, though, was just a test for the site. It was just something that they did quick to just kind of see if the site would work and would be able to handle video sharing files, which are much larger than just picture files. But the video itself really set the tone for the early years of YouTube and the early years of video sharing, and these early years of YouTube are going to be dominated by short, minute-long videos. As a whole, it helped to usher in the era of the viral video, which, was not much of a thing in the past. But now, in the early 2000s, it really was going to blow up and become much more of a thing. So the following month of May of 2005, YouTube officially launches as a beta site. So it was available to very few users. Not many people were on the site, but it was, being tested, being run to see if it would be able to handle the, like I said earlier, the traffic and the traction. YouTube officially was not launched, though, until December 15th of 2005, after a few more investments and investors had been backing the company after it had done well in the beta testing time, and really the world was changed forever. YouTube really became a groundbreaking site for video sharing. And so over its first year of being a live site, YouTube would grow kind of gradually. Definitely it was a new, exciting thing that kind of was spread by word of mouth a little bit. One of the earliest YouTube videos to blow up was actually an SNL skit by Lonely Island, and it was their song or their video entitled Lazy Sunday. And, back in the day, Lonely Island was a really popular SNL skit. So this one kind of blew up because it was, YouTube was kind of new, and people just took the video and they were re-uploading it a bunch of different times. So the video got shared multiple times across multiple different channels, people just uploading it. Obviously, the video itself, between all of these uploads, was racking up millions of views. Uploads of the video were getting to, upwards of 1 million views. So it really was one of the first videos to be spread around kind of like wildfire in using YouTube. This, of course, led to NBC, who owns SNL, to request that the song be taken down. And this kind of jumps into copyright and copyright infringement, which is something that YouTube as a company has always, I feel, struggled with. And I still don't think that they have it completely right, but this was one of the first times that we really had to see people struggling to take their their content down because it was being uploaded by other people. While it had happened before, the Lazy Sunday video was the first major example of an intellectual property being uploaded and shared by people who do not own the intellectual property. So from here, I want to take a quick little break and just talk about my experience with YouTube, because I've been with YouTube, I would say, since probably the beginning. Definitely 2006, 2007 is when I first got into YouTube and go on and just just watch random videos of random things. But summer of 2007 is when I first used YouTube to actively seek out kinds of videos that I was interested in watching. And those two things were videos about Final Fantasy X, which is probably my favorite video game of all time, and it was something that I played a lot as a kid. The summer of 2007 is also when I got into Survivor, which is like my favorite show. I've told this story multiple times, but I saw Survivor Fiji, like the finale that aired in May of 2007, and then Survivor China, which was the 15th season, aired that fall in 2007, and that summer, in between those two things, I had watched seasons 1 through 13, all on YouTube. They were all uploaded, all there, all completely free for people to watch. Once again, before copyright and people holding their intellectual properties really got a hold and took those kinds of videos down. They were all there. I also watched Big Brother, which is a very similar show to Survivor. So that was kind of what I was doing with YouTube. I didn't actually create an account with YouTube until like a really, really, really long time later. I would just go on and not be logged in as anyone and just kind of watch videos. But YouTube itself was actually becoming, it was about to make a big step, and it was about to become a child of Google. So let's kind of go there next. So part 2 is finding an identity, and I'm labeling these years of 2007 to 2010. So after almost 1 year as a live site, YouTube had accumulated millions and millions of views, and it had attracted the eye of Google. So between October and November of 2006, Google officially acquired YouTube in what is reported to be a stock buy-in at a value of $1.65 billion. It was definitely a good move, I think, for both companies. So the following year, in 2007, this is when one of the very, very first actual viral videos happened. And one of those first videos to do that was the video of Charlie Bit My Finger. Now, I think everyone that was kind of in the YouTube sphere at this time had probably seen Charlie Bit My Finger. It had millions of views and was really kind of a touchstone of pop culture for a little bit. Amazing exposure for YouTube. It led to the video obviously being posted and shared many times over. Remixes were created. Some people took the video and made re-edits to make it kind of more creative. And these were some of the earliest kind of creative videos on YouTube before it was a lot of people just uploading whatever, like I said. And now people were actually getting creative and making YouTube content for YouTube, which was a really interesting idea that I think not a lot of people had thought about at the time. And while that sounds kind of dumb, when I was kind of going back, I forgot for a second that YouTube itself was not originally a creative platform. It was not built to be people creating videos for the purpose of them going to YouTube. It was built with the idea that random videos and videos of everyday life were going to be taken and put onto YouTube for people to see into everyday life. And I think that is what grew into, which is arguably the biggest YouTube sphere, which is lifestyle, I guess, videos. So people just sharing their lives. Like you saw story times really be a huge thing. People just cleaning their room. I mean, and now you have different sects of YouTube, which all kind of stem from the lifestyle area of YouTube. You have beauty YouTube and makeup. You have BookTube, which I'm a big part of. You have gamers who upload videos. Now a lot of those are kind of going to Twitch, though. But yeah, it was just interesting to kind of go back and remember that initially the idea for YouTube was not for people to create videos. It was for people to just share random videos, kind of like on America's Funniest Home Videos type thing. But over the next couple of years, YouTube, which is now owned by Google, it would go over some layout changes and some, implement new features. One of which was live broadcasting, which was kind of crazy, and it was really trend setting. It was a very impactful decision, and in my opinion, it further catapulted YouTube to be just the biggest online sharing platform, because it's not the only one. It's not the only online sharing platform out there, but it's the one that most people use most often. In August of 2007, this is when the first ads on YouTube popped up. And this was surprising for me when I kind of found this out and going back and doing research, because in my head, ads did not come to YouTube videos until much later. Like 2007 seems really early for ads to be popping up on YouTube videos. In December of 2010, so skipping forward 3 years, still talking about ads, that's when the skippable ad format that we're all much more familiar with, it was officially put into place. So I guess, that sounds a little bit more when I remember getting ads on videos. In December of 2007, so kind of going back a little bit, sorry I'm skipping around kind of, but YouTube launched the partner program, is when people were finally making money off their YouTube videos. They were becoming partners. Now is kind of a good time when talking about this era. I called it Finding Identities, so I want to talk more about the actual content that was taking off for YouTube at this time. So as discussed, the early years were being dominated by viral videos, and skits really were huge as well. But this time also took up like music videos, and covers became really big. One of, the earliest ways that people kind of found success on YouTube was by being musically talented and uploading covers of songs and then playing instruments like the piano or the guitar or something like that. Some of the biggest creators at this time, one of the biggest YouTube music creators was Christina Grimmie, who was tragically killed in 2016. Justin Bieber as well kind of had the same thing. They both came up at about the same time, were discovered on YouTube, and became, really big, successful stars and had pretty successful music careers. Justin Bieber obviously is a huge star, but he started on YouTube. This is when people started the idea that they could become famous off YouTube, and that they could create really successful careers on YouTube as well. And that idea has really just grown and exploded over these years that we've seen now, with people actually becoming full-fledged like celebrities off of YouTube. But these are kind of the earliest examples, and they became actual celebrities, whereas people who are celebrities now on YouTube are more like influencer types, and they are not known, I would say, by like a lot of mainstream, everyday, casual viewers of pop culture. I would say they're definitely much more of a niche group that people know of them, and I'm thinking of people like Jake Paul, like Tana Mojo, Nikita Dragon, Jeffree Star, Shane Dawson, these kinds of people. Like, they are not well-known celebrities that like my mom or anyone really would know. But if you are familiar with YouTube, or you're in a certain generation and a certain demographic, you 100% know who these people are. And while some of these people are very special, especially in the beginning, are very special and random cases, it did lead to the idea that YouTube could be a legitimate platform and a legitimate job, which is still, I think, something that recently, over I would say the last 2 to 3 years, has kind of diminished, of people's stereotypes of online content creators not being like, or not having a real job. These early people are some of the founding fathers, you could say, of people believing YouTube was very legitimate. One of my earliest creators that I began to follow was Jenna Marbles, who before I even created a YouTube channel, I would go to her channel every Wednesday or Thursday, whatever it was, and watch her newest video. She really was a pioneer on this platform. Her breakout video came in 2010 with the how to trick people into thinking you look good. And I think that Jenna and the Jenna of today are obviously two totally different people, but it goes back to what I was just saying about you can really see the content evolution by following Jenna Marbles, because she's one of the people that was on the platform the longest, and who but she always got views. She never really had a period where her channel was dying out or anything like that. She was always popular, always grabbing in the views, which not a lot of people can say. Some people hit it big for a little bit and then eventually, slowly fade out. But she was kind of always like that YouTube bitch, I guess you could say. And one of the things that these early YouTube videos showed, which is much different from YouTube videos now, is the idea that you didn't need a lot of fancy lighting or fancy equipment to make videos. Like Jenna, for example, her earliest videos were just recorded on her webcam on her laptop. They didn't have these really fancy, expensive cameras, and a lot of people now, just record on their phones, and that's totally how they get by and do all of their content creation. So that's also another interesting evolution, and this time period, 2007 to 2010, was really an influx of all of those things. You had people just creating videos on their webcams, and then you had people who were spending a lot of money to get really good lighting and really good equipment and really good cameras and those kinds of things. But you didn't need it necessarily to find an audience, and you didn't need it to, and by it I mean the really fancy equipment. You didn't need that to start kind of your YouTube career or just get onto YouTube, because it really became a place where anyone could just get online to share their thoughts. Vlogging became really popular. Video diaries were really popular. It just became a place for people to come together and really start to share their interest. And that is going to kind of bring me into the next part 3. I'm calling the golden era of YouTube, and I'm labeling this as the years from 2010 to 2015. Now I'm calling this the golden era for 2 reasons. The first is because this is the years that I really started to fall in love with YouTube and YouTubers as personalities. And it's really when I started to take notice more of the platform as like a legitimate place and less as a website that I just would occasionally visit to have fun on for a couple of hours during like the night or whatever I was doing at the time. And the second reason I'm calling this the golden era is because this is when the YouTuber became a huge thing, I would say, and really jumped off the page, and you really started seeing people become famous for being on YouTube and for having a lot of subscribers, and for kind of taking those subscribers and taking that money and creating careers by like writing books or going into movies and TV shows and things like that. This is when all of those people really began and started to take off, because a lot more people were coming to YouTube. It had really large numbers, bigger than before. So that's kind of the reason that I'm defining it as the golden era. Maybe you disagree, but by 2010, YouTube was racking in about 1 billion views a day. So in just, a couple of years, YouTube was huge at this point. It's even larger now, but it was new kind of content was coming onto the platform every single second, and it was blowing up. And as I kind of alluded to before, you started to see a lot more niche communities explode on YouTube, like makeup and people who are beauty gurus and doing makeup tutorials, to people who are lifestyle influencers and doing like lookbooks and fashion videos, to people who are talking about books, to people who are talking about games, to people who are talking about candles and whatever you can think of, like puzzles, macrame, crocheting, like all of these things, all of these different weird niche hobbies that people a lot of the time just kind of kept to themselves. You now had a place to go and talk to other people about it and connect with other people about the things that you personally have a passion for and personally love. And, it really was a resurgence of the early online chat rooms when people were kind of doing this and creating fan communities. Like fandoms became huge at this time, and really a lot of that is arguably due to like Twilight and the rise of YA and the rise to all of these like young adult movies targeted toward teens. You also had Tumblr blowing up at this time, but it really was a crazy time to kind of be alive. And thinking back to it's so weird to think back to, but it really does give me a lot of joy, because it was such like a simpler time in life for me, YouTube itself was also growing. You had, PewDiePie, as I mentioned earlier, he really started exploding, and gaming content has really took over, and gaming content really has become and stayed one of the largest YouTube kind of communities. Like I said before, though, a lot of them are starting to move to Twitch, as that has really taken over as a site and a platform dedicated to gaming and to gamers, whereas YouTube, you have to jump through a lot of hoops sometimes to get your videos up, especially doing like live broadcasts and live streams on YouTube is not always the easiest, whereas Twitch, it's really easy, really user-friendly. So you also see YouTube now becoming a place where people are taking kind of change and action. So one of the first things was the It Gets Better campaign. And this, I think, was in 2010. They really used YouTube as a platform to spread their message and to connect with young people who felt a little bit alone and felt like they didn't have anyone. They could now go onto YouTube and see videos of people sharing their stories. You also had the Coney 2012 thing happen in 2012. That was kind of really big on YouTube as well. I think this is also a lot of the time where Twitter started becoming a bigger thing and was starting to be spread a little bit or more around Twitter, but definitely YouTube caught on. But in April of 2011, YouTube officially launched YouTube Live, and you later got the ability to rent movies and TV shows. So it was just more of a market for YouTube. Not only could you watch these people creating these videos from their rooms or whatever, you can now also watch some of your favorite content, movies and TV shows for a cost, sure, but they were there for you. You didn't have to necessarily buy DVDs or things like that. They were just there kind of at your fingertips. You could just click rent now or whatever, and it would be right there on your laptop, computer, whatever you were watching it from at that time. This also gave YouTube the ability to start creating their own original content. This sort of upset a lot of some of the bigger creators. And going back to my own experiences with YouTube around this time, this is when I really officially created my channel. So my channel officially was created on February 25th, 2013. Obviously, I was watching YouTube years beforehand, but I never had an account. So this is when I finally created an account and started actually subscribing to people. I started obviously not uploading YouTube videos till like 4 or 5 years later. I started following people like Tyler Oakley, Joey Graceffa, Connor Franta, these people that I really kind of looked up to as kids. Grace Helbig was another one. These people that just were creating YouTube videos, and they were all moving to LA. Looking back, it's really kind of embarrassing how much I did love these people, but I was just an impressionable teenager, and they weren't that much older than me, so they felt really relatable in a way that no other celebrity had really felt to me before. Of course I liked like singers and actors and things like that, but part of me always, as a young kid and a young teen, felt like they were far away from me, whereas YouTubers felt much more real, felt much more authentic, like they were giving us a glimpse into their lives, and their content was enjoyable. Question mark to that. Looking back at a lot of the videos and things that I watched at this time, it's very cringeworthy, very unfunny, very, very not good. Just not good content. But most people my age were kind of watching that content because of all of the reasons that I said before. These people were being themselves for the most part. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people put on a lot of facade, and now being almost 10 years removed from that time of my life, and those people being almost 10 years removed from that time in their life, we know now that, it was not all what it was made out to be. Yes, people were making tons of money. I mean, not the money that they were making nowadays. Now they're making tons of money, but they were making a lot of money then. They were not the nicest people behind the scenes. There was, of course, a lot of backstabbing and infighting and people talking bad about each other behind their backs and those kinds of things. And it wasn't good, but it really appealed to me as a young kid who had a dream to live in Southern California one day, and that these were just kids that started in their room and now they're getting millions of views, and they're all moving to the place that I wanted to live at one point in my life, and they're doing all these sponsorships and they're collaborating, and it looks like they're having such fun times at such a young age. So it was just kind of a crazy time. for me, for the content that was being out there, for the people that were creating this content. It really was, it was a time. It was a time for sure. But yeah, eventually all golden eras have to come to an end, and YouTube's definitely did. But moving all the way to February of 2014, after almost 10 years of being in existence as a platform, a big change in leadership took place. So Susan Wojcicki, who she was someone who worked for Google and was very prominent in pushing for Google to buy YouTube. She is named the new CEO of YouTube. And she still holds that position to this day. She's been running YouTube for 7 years now. And I think this decision is what shifts YouTube into the modern era. And we see some of the biggest changes take place now. So 2014 and 2015 is when we see the huge push for family friendly. We also see sponsorships and ads still ongoing, but we see the FTC guidelines change, and now you have to disclose at all times whether you're doing a sponsorship or an ad, which was not always the case in the past. So I can't even think of how many people just wasted their money on pointless things because some YouTuber told them to do it, and they probably got paid like a couple $1,000s to do that. But the last big shift that I want to talk about before we really talk about the modern era of YouTube is the introduction of YouTube Red. Which it's now known as YouTube Premium, and it's what YouTube puts its original content on, which angered a lot of original content creators when it was announced. I think that was a little bit of an overreaction at the time because we see now that YouTube Red and YouTube Premium is not really a huge thing for YouTube themselves. It's not really a huge thing that YouTube really, it doesn't really take away from the people who are creating YouTube content. If anything, YouTube now pushes their biggest content creators to create content for YouTube Red and YouTube Premium. So I think it worked out beautifully for both parties. So we're now going to be entering part 4 of the video, which I'm calling The Rise of the Influencer. And I'm labeling this 2016 to 2020. And so we kick off this section of the video with YouTube going back to its roots, and music kind of being ingrained with YouTube. We see Adele's Hello music video. It is the fastest video to hit 1 billion views. And why am I talking about music again? Well, because this era is talking about the influencers, and influencers bring with it diss tracks, which were hugely popular, and people like Rice Gum and Logan Paul and Jake Paul, they became huge for creating these diss tracks, and that's really how they kind of built their careers, I would say, on YouTube. People love them because they were just dumb, easy content to consume, and it really goes back to the early days of kind of viral videos and people creating content that was easy to consume, that you didn't have to necessarily think too hard about, that you could just sit down and laugh at and enjoy. Like creating these videos everywhere and just creating like beef with stupid people. I would say really between like 2016 and 2018 is kind of the height of like the diss track. Really what I think the biggest tragedy of diss tracks is that it made people think that they could all rap, which is not the truth. So that I think is what hurt the most, is that these white boys, specifically, some of these white boys, I'm just thinking specifically of Logan and Jake Paul. Oh god, they're some of the worst people that YouTube has ever promoted onto a platform. But you know what? They're a whole different video. Maybe I'll make that video one day. Maybe not, because they literally like make me want to rip my hair out. They're so like stupid. But let's move on. As I already mentioned before, when Susan kind of took over for YouTube, she really started pushing, and not she, the decision was not all her. YouTube as a company made the decision to push ad-friendly content. In August of 2016, YouTube mass demonetized a ton of videos. And you saw people like Philip DeFranco, who's a really big news channel on YouTube, really speak out against this. Because YouTube itself was deeming these videos, you know, un-ad-worthy, and not being able to monetize when people were saying, you know, these YouTube videos, some of them have been up for years and have been monetized for years, so why suddenly is it now? And all of it relates to YouTube's ad-friendly push. really pushing kids content. Kids content blew up over the last couple of years. People like Jojo Siwa is the first one to kind of come to mind, but there are tons of other creators that create content specifically targeted towards children and young children, and these videos, because they're deemed kid friendly and ad friendly, are making so much more money than other YouTube videos that talk about more mature or controversial topics. This is something that YouTube, I think, is still in hot water for, and people still criticize YouTube for, which I think is rightly so. I'm not going to go so far as to say it's censorship, because it's definitely not. And YouTube, I would say 100% is more of a liberal leaning platform, and they let people talk about a lot of things that are not necessarily great and are maybe more harmful or problematic, misinformation being spread. But if they find this out and they kind of find you and target you a little bit, then yeah, your content is just done. But all of this was really just kind of a reckoning coming for YouTube, content creators, that I think we're still seeing, as I said, the aftershocks of to this day, and I think we'll still see that moving forward through YouTube's history. Over the next couple of years, from 2016 until 2017, YouTube and its guidelines are going to go through huge shifts. And as I said, they're a liberal kind of leaning platform and letting people talk about whatever they want to talk about. But there definitely was a huge crackdown on a lot of topics. A lot of words that you say would instantly get a video demonetized or instantly try to get a video taken down. A lot of things that kind of were passable, which were not. I'm not saying that these things that were said were right. One of the biggest things that comes to mind is PewDiePie. He was actually removed from the partner program after it was found out that he had been making and promoting anti-Semitic and Nazi jokes and imagery on his channel for a while, for a couple of years. YouTube is going to make a huge change to its algorithm, and what this does, it has major ramifications. It affects how channels succeed, how channels grow, because if your channel, for whatever reason, is marked as that it's not very ad friendly, then YouTube's algorithm will not pick up your channel and push your videos to new people. The algorithm it's a really weird topic. It's a very mystic, elusive thing. There have been YouTube employees that say they don't even understand the YouTube algorithm, even more so nowadays than it was in the past. It's a huge luck-based, that if you put out a video that somehow gains a lot of traction, that can be the launching point for your career on YouTube, or for just creating and growing your channel at a steady pace. There are people who would just create for years and years and years and never go anywhere. I feel like I'm kind of one of those examples. I definitely, I would say it's my own fault. I'm a not very consistent content creator, and the YouTube algorithm loves consistency. My videos tend to be a little bit longer, but YouTube loves the 10 to 17 mark of videos. That's kind of their sweet spot. So you really have to meet kind of specific parameters for your channel to even get pushed and be pushed up by the algorithm. Additionally to changes, the partner program, as I mentioned, was changed. So a lot of people are now being held to a higher standard to get into the partner program, which I'm not necessarily mad about, because the partner program, in theory, is for the channels who are the biggest and reaching the most audiences, and I don't want people who are spreading bad or misinformation to be in the partner program and to have a large audience to be spreading that bad or misinformation. And additionally, all of this, once again, is just relating down to kids content. There was that huge crackdown on kids content. As I mentioned before, Logan Paul, he had one of the biggest controversies in YouTube's history with the Suicide Forest video. That was a major push. That video was kind of a catalyst for a lot of companies pulling ads from YouTube. That was one of the biggest factors in pushing the reforms for kids content and for ad-friendly content, because Logan Paul really, he messed up so bad, and what he did really had affected YouTube in the major long term. 2018 and 2019 is only described as a free fall for YouTube in a sense, but we're still spiraling that ad, copyright, kid content, weird sphere that we've been in for a couple of years since, about 2017, 2018, when all of these changes really started getting pushed. And so it really just led to people giving up on YouTube. As I mentioned, a lot of gamers moved over to Twitch because it was just easier. And then in September and December of 2019, YouTube made one of its biggest changes to its content and content flagging system. In September of 2019, YouTube was fined because it was found that they were violating children's privacy laws, and that, along with another event that I had no idea about until I researched this video, really pushed the change for that content. This event being a YouTuber by the name of Matt Watson. He exposed a pedophile ring who was using YouTube to communicate with each other, and they would communicate in the comments of kid YouTube videos, which is really just absolutely disgusting. And that was part of the huge reason why content creators now have to make sure their content is going to be labeled as children's content, because a lot of times children's content videos automatically will have their comments turned off. They will have comments disabled. A lot of the time, this is actually YouTube's decision because you label your content as kid-friendly. Well, a lot of the other time, it's also the content creator's decision to turn off comments. That big exposure, big expose was a huge kind of thing for YouTube to deal with. I wouldn't say it was necessarily mainstream. I don't think a lot of people knew about it. Me, who was huge in YouTube, and even at this point I was following a lot of YouTube kind of drama videos, I had no idea that this had happened. I, of course, was aware of all of the content changes and the community guideline changes, but I was not aware of some of the major events that were the main factor behind some of these changes. And then the final big change I want to talk about was the change in YouTube's harassment policy. So this put a ban on content that would be deemed malicious towards people and towards certain groups. This was all due to, or it was being decided upon YouTube's internal review system. And so while this is inherently a good thing, and I think it's probably led to more good than bad, it also leads to people abusing the system because they can just flag content, flag someone's comment, whatever, and mark it as abuse or whatever, or use the copyright infringement, copyright claim system. I think it's good that YouTube is trying to push and keep people safe, both in protecting their creative properties as well as protecting people from being attacked by certain groups or certain people. But I definitely think sometimes it's not always clear when people are doing the right thing by using the system or doing this wrong thing by trying to take down content they don't like, that they feel is being mean, when really it's just fair criticism. One of the biggest examples that comes to mind is Gabby Hanna, of course, who last summer went on a huge kind of thing talking about being shadow banned and talking about how people were only commenting negative things and that she just wanted to black out the haters, and that all of the controversy she was in was just because people hated her and it was not fair criticism. Whatever, Gabby. Talking about the content that is dominating YouTube in this very turbulent, changing time, one community that I haven't really gone deep into yet is the makeup and beauty guru community. This is one of the oldest YouTube communities to be around for a really long time. They've been around for, since really the early years, like 2008, 2009, around there. You see some of the biggest beauty gurus nowadays being like Jeffree Star and James Charles, who I don't think are really the best people to be providing light to that community. There are a lot of smaller kind of beauty community members who are not evil people, but you also see the rise of family content. One of the subsects of that is being family vlogging channels, which I feel are absolutely disgusting channels. I'm sorry if you're a family vlogging channel. I'm sorry if you enjoy watching family vlogging channels, but I do not agree with that. I believe I've talked about before how these types of videos exploit these children with no protection towards the children. When kid actors are acting, they have, agents and parents and guidelines set aside that protect them and protect their money and protect their health and safety. These kids who are being forced into these family content videos do not have any of that. They have, most of the time, parents who just want some way to make money. And trust me, I get it. As someone who, is not rich or not rolling in money, I would always love to have some form of extra income, to be making more money, to live more comfortably. But when you are exploiting your children and you're putting your children in sometimes dangerous situations, I don't think that's right. And now, once again, I don't want people to think I'm generalizing to every single person out there. The comments and the video clips I've seen of most family vlogging channels is not good. Now, there's always the argue that the most radical get moved to the top, and those are the ones that you hear about, and the ones that are perfectly normal and fine you never hear about. And that's definitely true. I'm sure there are a lot of kids who really enjoy making YouTube content with their parents, but was that their decision to enter into that agreement, or was it the parents' decision? I think there needs to be a lot of review process going into family content, family vlogging, and I think there needs to be people stepping in to protect these children's health and safety, their funds. They are racking in these millions of views, which turn into thousands to millions of dollars for some of these parents, and they never would ever see a dime of that money potentially. It will always belong to their parents. It gets funneled into, the bank account of their parent, not them, when they're 6, 7, 8 years old. And then when they become a teenager, are they going to want to branch out and make their own money, or are they just going to stick with the channel that they've been with for 10 years and continue to make money that way, which still goes to their parents' pocket? I think it's a very weird gray area. I think it needs to be investigated and changed. Emphasis on the safety of some of these kids needs to be placed. Now, that's not the only kind of content that has been blowing up. We see the rise of the influencer, of the lifestyle, so people like Tana Mojo, Emma Chamberlain, these kinds of people, commentary YouTubers. My personal self, I'm a huge booktuber watch. I love Kayla from Books and Lala. The Right Opinion is someone who I started watching last summer, who I absolutely love. The kind of commentary area, like drama area of YouTube, is somewhere that I got into, I would say, about 2017, 2018. And I absolutely love kind of that area of YouTube. Speaking of The Right Opinion, he has a 4-hour video about Nikocado avocado, which is just like chef's kiss perfection of a video. So I highly recommend you check that video out because it was amazing. And if you love long videos, like I love a good 45-minute to 4-hour video, apparently. It's amazing. Alright, and now we're going to be entering the last part of this video, part 5, future directions. So this is going to be 2021 to the future. And I don't have much to say about this part. I feel like throughout the video I've sprinkled in a little bit of some of my thoughts on some changes that I think YouTube still needs to work on. YouTube is still a powerhouse. It's not slowing down. It really is just getting bigger and bigger every day. I think YouTube's downfall, if and when it ever comes, will be YouTube itself, by just pushing against its creators so hard in some areas that creators are going to give up. And you already see a lot of people moving over to platforms like TikTok, like I've mentioned many times, the gamers moving over to Twitch. You get people who blow up on YouTube, create a huge Instagram following, and become Instagram influencers and influencers that way. So I think YouTube needs to be a little careful in how it handles its partnerships, especially moving forward in the era of social media being a viable marketing and money-making area that it is. But overall, I love YouTube. Honestly, I love making YouTube videos. I love watching YouTube videos. It's the place I spend most of my time, most of my energy doing when I'm just relaxing and I need something to be put on in the background. I'm probably going to put on a YouTube video, to be honest. So that's kind of where I end it. And the ending, I just want to ask you down below, What do you think of YouTube as a platform? Let me know a little bit about your history of the platform. Are there any people that I didn't mention that you feel like are huge influences to the YouTube sphere and to YouTube success? Just let me know any of your thoughts about the video. As always, love if you would share and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you would like. Not going to force you to, but that's kind of it. That's all I have. So thank you so much for watching if you got this far. I know this is going to be a really long video. I appreciate it so much, and I will be back hopefully soon with a new one. Bye.